Have you ever been talking to your doctor and felt like they just don't get you? Like no matter how many times you explain yourself, they just don't seem to listen. I have experienced this too many times myself, and I want to share a recent story about an encounter just like this. But then, I want to give us some encouragement at the end. But first, greetings and please welcome back to Fitness with an Illness, where we like to learn how to navigate life with a chronic illness and pursue better health each and every day. If that sounds interesting to you, I would really appreciate it if you consider liking and subscribing to the channel, as it really helps us out. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, our medical system is broken, at least in my humble opinion. And I don't mean the doctors are broken, I mean that the system itself is broken. The doctors, I do believe, are trying their best with the information that is given to them. The problem, I believe, is that information which they are being given. Doctors are not taught to think outside the box. They are taught to look at fixed data. And I want to give you a very recent example to prove this. So I recently had a procedure known as a stellate ganglion block. It is an experimental treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome. If you want to know more about that procedure and how I felt afterwards, you can check out this video to learn more about that. But the procedure went well, and right now I'm really just kind of waiting to see how much of a positive impact it has on my health. Then, about 1 month after the procedure, I had a follow-up with my doctor regarding the procedure, and that is the story I want to share with you now. So before I had my stellate ganglion block, the doctor had me fill out a couple of forms, basically assessing my anxiety and PTSD levels, because typically this doctor deals with anxiety and PTSD, not chronic fatigue. And so they had me fill out these two forms to get a baseline for my levels in these two areas. And I scored high enough on both these tests that they were willing to go ahead and perform the procedure, even though chronic fatigue is not what they normally treat. So I had the procedure, went well. I did have some ups and downs in how I was feeling afterwards. Definitely things that were a result of the procedure, because basically what the procedure is doing is it is disrupting your body's fight or flight response, because with chronic fatigue, they believe that the nervous system is perpetually stuck in fight or flight mode. So this injection goes directly into the nervous system via your neck, and basically disrupts that whole thing and tries to give your nervous system a chance to reset itself. So in the weeks after that, you can imagine that if your nervous system has been stuck going 100 miles per hour for years, and they suddenly hit the brakes on that, your body's obviously going to feel something. And so I had all kinds of weird sensations, warm and cold hands, warm and cold, constantly feeling very on edge and then relaxed. I had this weird feeling of just like these strong emotions that wanted to come out. Like I felt like I wanted to yell or like I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. And these are all the different things I was feeling, which are not normal for me. They only have ever happened after this stellate ganglion block. So very obvious to me anyways that they are a result of the injection. And so a month after the procedure, I had a follow-up appointment with the doctor's assistant, and she was basically checking in on how I was doing and trying to see how much of an improvement I felt. But before I saw this assistant, they had me fill out those same two forms that I had to fill out before the procedure. So again, the forms were about anxiety and PTSD. So I had to fill these out so that she had something to look at while we were discussing. And so this is where the problem with the modern medical system comes in. When me and this assistant were talking, she has clearly been trained to only look at fixed data. Because I would ask her questions about, hey, this is what I felt. My hands were warm and freezing cold and warm and freezing cold, and it would change every hour. Is that normal for after this procedure? And she would look at her paper and go, well, it looks like your numbers on your report improved. And then me, again, okay, but what does that mean? Is that normal to have warm and cold hands? Well, I'd probably recommend following up with your mental health care provider. So I didn't get an answer. So then I would ask about, okay, so I felt very on edge and then relaxed, and on edge and relaxed. Is that normal after the procedure? Well, again, the numbers on your report have improved. Okay, but that's not what I asked. I asked, is this normal after the procedure? Well, I'd probably follow up with your mental health care provider. And I could keep telling you this story, but the bottom line is I got those same two answers repeatedly, no matter what I asked. And so eventually I gave up on the conversation and just let it go and moved on. This is the problem with the modern healthcare system, is that doctors are trained to look at data and numbers on a chart. They don't look at the patient. They don't listen to their stories. They don't try to get to the bottom of the issue. So after all of this, it was incredibly clear to me that this doctor was simply trained to analyze data, and she had no other answers outside of that. Now, I want to be clear. My fault is not with this doctor or his assistant. My fault is with the medical system and how we train our doctors, because this is not an isolated incident. On the contrary, this is how many people are beginning to feel about the modern healthcare system, is that you are just a number, you are a cog in the machine, and you are thrown onto a conveyor belt, and unless you fit into a certain type of sick box, they don't know what to do with you. You know, if you go back a couple hundred years, even modern Chinese medicine is very different, where you look at a patient and you're trying to understand the body as a whole, because this is all one machine. And oftentimes we look at things in a very isolated and microscopic way. We don't look at the whole picture. And all of our specialists work this way. It's very interesting to me that you go back a couple hundred years and a doctor had to understand the entire human body and how it worked. And now we break up medicine into specialists, where one doctor specializes on the heart, and one works on the brain, and one works on your feet, and etc. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I do think that these different groups, number one, should talk to each other more, but number two, even if you are a heart specialist, you should understand the rest of the body. And there was a doctor I found online maybe about a year ago. I forget his name. If I find it, I'll try to put it somewhere in the video. But there's a doctor I found who he's actually a heart surgeon, but he has spent a lot of time working on understanding the gut, because there's now so much evidence that the gut is so connected to the heart. And so he has been working a lot before performing any kind of heart surgery. He likes to work on the gut with his patients, because if you can fix the gut internally, he might be able to avoid surgery, which I think is a phenomenal approach for a doctor. But most doctors nowadays don't think this way. And that is where the problem lies. Our system is so compartmentalized, and we need to start talking to each other again. This is the one area where typically naturopaths tend to do a better job. Naturopaths are not perfect, and I think there's a fine line, because some naturopaths, you reach a point where they're kind of almost like voodoo witch doctor type stuff, and I feel like there's something in the middle where modern medicine obviously has its uses, and so does natural medicine. I just want both parties to be willing to cooperate and talk with one another to actually help the patient, rather than just trying to force the patient to fit inside a box so that they know how to treat them. That is my frustration, I think, with the modern medical system. Now, the encouragement I want to leave us with is, first of all, number one, do not be harsh on your doctors themselves. I think 99% of all doctors go into it with the right heart and the right intent. They want to help people get better. It is just that the medical system itself does not allow them to think outside the box. If a patient walks in, you are given 5 to 10 minutes with them, and you need to prescribe them something quickly to try and be a band-aid for their symptoms, to make them feel like they at least got something done. But the encouraging thing about that is I think it's gone on long enough that a lot of people are starting to wake up, and a lot of people are starting to take health into their own hands. Just the other day, I saw a video of a doctor who was upset at RFK because RFK was encouraging people to eat healthy, to exercise, and to start asking more questions about your health, and not taking everything your doctor says as if it's gospel. And this doctor was clearly upset because he's like, no, you must listen to me. I have all the answers, and I know what to do. I went to medical school. There's no way you'll know more than I will. And yet somehow there are so many people now who are conquering their lifelong and their chronic illnesses by taking a look at their own health and taking it into their own hands, listening to their body, looking at more natural remedies, and they are trying to find solutions outside of this broken system. And so that, I think, is a good thing. And I would encourage all of us to slowly start advocating for our own health in our own ways, doing our own research, and even just trying to understand our own bodies, because every human is different and every immune system, every gut, every brain is completely different. And so we need to take the time to understand our bodies so that we can better treat ourselves. Yes, absolutely. Use your doctors, your naturopaths, your internal medicine, whatever. Use them all because they are helpful and they have a lot of knowledge still. But we are reaching a point where I hope that more and more people will start looking at their health in a new light. They will start asking the people around them, the people who have recovered from illnesses similar to them, the people who have brought themselves out of terrible illnesses. These are the people we should be listening to. So I hope that helps. I hope it's an encouragement, and I hope that we'll see you here soon. Please take care. God bless. We will see you in the next one. Adios.